Welcome back to another episode of the Wood Couture Podcast. Today we have the absolute privilege to welcome back the one and only Sonal Kotecha from Rumah Interiors. Welcome back, Sonal.
Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Last time we met, Sonal was at Lasvit stand Downtown Design, but we didn't get enough. Now, live here in Dubai, we want to dive deep in our soul to get to know more about Sonal. So Sonal, take us back to your childhood. Tell us a bit where you're from.
So I'll take you right back. A lot of people, they don't know this. I grew up in an extended family structure. I grew up in Manchester in the UK. Lived with my dad's siblings and grandparents. So we lived in a small house, big family. So it's actually my obsession with interior space, and the reason I became an interior designer to begin with really does date back to like my early childhood, because I used to crave having more space, and I had developed this obsession from a very early age to have my own space, have my own bedroom, and that, you know, over the years manifested itself into what I decided to study, which was interior architecture and design. And now for a living, I get to design other people's spaces. So I love it.
Wow. Last time you mentioned that, again, there was something that really caught my attention, that, you know, I was an artistic child. What did you do, you know, as an artistic child?
So my dad, he would go shopping pretty much every day, every other day to the cash and carry, and I would go along and I'd go over to the stationery section, and I'd always bring back a little something to essentially play with, so paints and colors. So I spent a lot of my time just paper, traditionally no iPads back in those days, and I would spend a lot of time just creating, and a lot of essentially the content that I was creating back in those days were spaces and houses, and I just found myself drawing spaces quite a lot. So yeah.
So what is your best memory of living in an extended family?
There are a lot of happy memories from growing up in an extended family. Spending a lot of time with my grandparents is probably definitely one of the main highlights. A lot of it centers, I'm sure you'll relate, being Italian, a lot of it centers around food. So yeah, and just spending time together, and yeah, it's very, very different these days. Everyone has their own nuclear setups, but I think a lot of our happiness as a child, it does come from that time that we got to spend with the extended family.
Living with a lot of people, and obviously, as you say, extended family, a lot of chaos, a lot of fun. Has that, now that you are an adult, you know, I mean, do you behave the same? Meaning, do you want to be surrounded by a lot of people, or do you really enjoy your own space?
I think naturally, I would lean towards the extroverted side, in that not being like loud, but I do get a lot of energy from being around other people. And I think a lot of that does actually date back to growing up in an extended family structure. Don't get me wrong, I do appreciate having my time alone and quiet time, especially as I've got older. And I appreciate having the space that I now have to spend time alone and creating and things like that. But I think definitely having having lots of people around growing up has reflected itself in who I've become in my personality type.
In your 15 years experience as a designer, as an artist, at what point in time you said, that's it, now I want to have my own business? What triggered in you that kind of desire?
So I don't know if there was actually like a trigger moment. I think it's something that's been brewing over the years. And growing up in a family that had a business, I think it's always been in my blood to want to do my own thing. So I don't think there was a moment that there was a shift that I said, okay, that's now what I want to do. I think it's always been there. But I was also very mindful of the fact that you can't just jump into a career like interior design. You have to kind of pay your dues. You have to work with other people, for other people, to learn, you know, the technical skills that you need to become an interior designer. I think when you're running your own business, you have to wear a lot of different hats every day. But I think what's great is before you kind of take that step and you do your own thing, it's important to work for somebody else and keep honing your technical skills, because once you do get out there and you do it for yourself, the technical things it's only going to compose maybe say 20% of what you're doing in the day. A lot of the other time is spent doing, a lot of admin, invoicing, marketing, business development. So I think it's important to get some like real focused experience before you decide to do it for yourself. So I think that's how it kind of played out for me.
The fact that you need to take care of the business, that you have to kind of, as you say, managing the business, not only producing, creative ideas, concept, design. Does that frustrate you in a sense that it takes you away from your core of designing?
I do miss being able to throw myself into design as much as I used to, yes, for sure, because that's a core part of being a designer. But at the same time, I wouldn't change it for the world. I think part of the reason why I love the creative side so much is because I know that on an average day, I'm doing many different things. So when I do carve out the time to do creative work and solve problems in a creative manner, I get a huge buzz out of that. I'd say that's definitely like what they call the flow state. When I do manage to like clear out say 4 to 6 hours and throw myself into doing some space planning or some mood boards or some SketchUp work, that's where I really feel like it's almost like meditation for me, because it's just quiet time. Either it's me, my laptop, some music and mouse, and then I just start building and creating.
Do you have a morning routine?
Oh, I'd love to say I wake up early and I go for a run, but no, I'd say I like to ease into my day. I do a couple of times a week have a personal trainer come home and train in the garden, but I like to have a nice cup of coffee. I start off the day typically by checking emails, and then I gradually transition as the day progresses. Sometimes you can't really overly plan for a day, but I like to transition into doing a bit more creative work during the afternoon time. But like I was saying, when you do your own thing and you can't always predict what's going to come in, sometimes you get a call from site that they've demolished a wall and there was a column that wasn't shown in any of the structural drawings, and all of a sudden like the day just flies by and you're coming up with solutions on the spot, or you're running over to a site to figure out how we can work around something that was unexpected, and then before you know it, the morning's turned into afternoon and it's turned into night.
It's interesting because although you say, well, not really, I don't have a morning routine, because we interviewed lots of entrepreneurial and successful businesswomen, and all of them, they claim not to have a routine, but actually when they describe what they do in the morning, it's very much a routine,
Yeah, I guess in its own way.
Yeah, and I think that part of your entrepreneurial skills within your DNA, makes you do it. Say, I must have a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. If I ask your husband, what is the three, let's say, word to describe Sonal, what would you say to me?
Oh, that's a great question. 3 things. I would say definitely motivated. Mm-hmm. I would say... Oh, it's a really difficult question. So yeah, I'd say he'd probably say motivated. Motivated/ambitious, I guess. I think that's probably a core part of me. Love people. And curious. That's
interesting. Well, I love the last part. So, do you attribute your curiosity to what?
I think I just have an inherent curiosity, definitely channeled towards what I do as a living. So I do have a curiosity to how people live. So that's why I particularly love what I do as well, because you kind of get an insight into how other people, spend their time, and you're designing for that. You're designing a solution for that. So I think having that curiosity at a base level is crucial, because you want to know. Like I know I want to know. I want to know what people do, how people live, what they like. So I think that forms a core part of the service that we also provide.
Would you say that is an attribute you look in somebody that come work for you, as a curiosity? So I think, yes, I think it's a great attribute. Not necessarily something I would look
out for, because I think it's important when you're looking for people to work with or work on your team. It's great to find people who are different to how you are. So currently, like on the team, we have 3 main designers. I'd say we all have very different personalities, very different, and we also have very different skill sets. But we kind of complete the whole circle of the process of, designing somebody's space. So I wouldn't necessarily look out for the curiosity aspect in somebody else, but I would like to see what other people would bring to the table that maybe I don't find that I have in myself already.
Interesting. Before we dive deep into Rumah Interiors, you tell us all about them. I want to discover a bit more about you. And what habits do you have that we don't know?
Good habits or bad habits?
You choose.
So I would say, I don't know if you'd call this a habit, but I love to travel. So it's something, it's like an obsession. That I'm always like kind of thinking about the next trip, and maybe that's not great for being like in the present moment, but I get very excited when I've got trips to plan for. But in terms of more kind of daily habits, I can't actually think of one.
Oh, if you lose focus, what would you do to regain your focus?
So when it comes to focus, I think an important part of trying to like regain my focus is I'll probably switch off my phone, put on some music. That's a big part of me. I'm definitely someone who would choose like music over television. So I don't actually watch a lot of TV, but that's probably a habit, is that I have music playing a lot of the time in the background of whatever I'm doing.
Right. What music do you like to listen?
So mostly like deep house. I also love some old school R&B music, but most of the time I'm listening to like kind of deep house or tropical house music.
Wow. Just to relax your...
Yeah, I find it very relaxing.
Get your chakra in balance.
Yeah, I find it very, very relaxing. Yeah.
Excellent. So let's go deeper into Rumah Interiors. Mm-hmm. I'm intrigued about the name. Tell me a bit more.
So the name Rumah actually means home in Indonesian. So when I was transitioning into starting my own company around 5 years ago now, I was in Bali, and I kept seeing the name Rumah on the plaques in front of every house. So it would say Rumah and then a number. So I just Googled what it meant, and it meant home, and it was just a moment where I was like, I was looking for a name with meaning, and it just kind of came to me that way.
It's interesting because your brother says you have a big ego, and I would say that every interior designer put their name on the front door. You haven't.
No, I actually specifically did not want to put my name on the company, and I don't think you should listen to what he says either.
But it's interesting because, it's fascinating. Even you grew up in the UK. You have Indian background, and extended family, fantastic history, culture, and you name it. But you chose an Indonesian name.
Yeah,
interesting.
I feel like I'm more like a child of the world. Like when I go to different places, I start to feel a connection to them. Mm-hmm. So I didn't necessarily feel like I needed to name the company from a language that represents part of my background. Bali for me is a place that I love. I absolutely love. You can ask any of my friends. So it just and the name, it just kind of rolls off your tongue. So it just kind of felt right. So I just went with it and went with my gut and my instinct. So
last time I was really impressed because many people defined, loving to do certain type of design and meaning, and most of them go hospitality. You actually said, no, I love residential interior design.
Yes.
Why is that?
I've always, like I said, I think it really does date back to like the backstory, like the childhood and having an obsession with your home environment. So I've always had an obsession with residential design without even knowing that that's what was forming back in those days. And yeah, even when I used to speak to peers in the industry and say that, my thing is residential, a lot of people actually, they didn't agree with me because, with residential projects, things can develop along the way that, can extend the amount of time that you're having to spend on a project, for example. You have to be a lot more malleable. But I feel that it's just the area of interior design where I feel I excel the most. I like being able to inject personality into a space, and I really enjoy, like you'll see, if you see my projects, like no two projects will ever look the same, and that's very intentional because they're not meant to, like every space we've designed for a client is meant to be representative of them, and no two people are ever the same. Even within a family, you won't find two people who are exactly the same. So I find it's really important to be able to reflect that in the spaces that you're designing for somebody. So it's actually the part of the interior design process that I love, is like really personalizing it. So it lends itself well to residential. But of course, I have worked across other projects as well. I've worked in hospitality, commercial, and I wouldn't say no to a project that's not residential necessarily, but it would have to have something about it that makes it quite special and makes it interesting and something that you can play with. I don't like to just kind of do something that would be copy-paste, like, work on a brand where there's, brand guidelines and you're just trying to fit a jigsaw together. That doesn't give me the same level of fulfillment, essentially. And I feel like I've reached a point in my career where, which is, it's great, and I know it's a huge luxury to do this, but I get to choose the projects that I work on. And I'd say 80-90% of the time they are residential.
What is the biggest challenge in doing residential interior design?
Definitely, that's the easy one. It's managing the time scales, because often projects can go on for a lot longer than anticipated. We can definitely kind of put a box around how much time we need to do design. Typically, say around 2 months, we can turn around a full detailed design package. If we're given a full 2 months to do it. Of course, we can do it in less. We can take a bit longer if we're given time. But on average, I'd say about 2 months. But once it comes to project going on site, a lot of that can be outside of your control. So, a project that's estimated to be on site for 2 or 3 months can, it's not uncommon to see them going on for, say, 6, 7, 8 months at a time. And the way that I try and mediate that is to have a service that's an add-on to the interior design service itself, the post-contract service, which, in the industry, people generally understand what that is, where you oversee the implementation of the design that you've done to make sure it's correctly executed. It's, the specifications haven't been overly value engineered, or if something has been value engineered, then I like to be involved in that final kind of sign off that, okay, yes, this still is true to the original intent. But I think it's important that when things do go over a certain time scale, that as a business, what we have to do is cover for that time, because, like I said, any point in the day, you can get a phone call and you have to run over to site to figure something out with, workshop something with your contractor and your client. And that time that you're spending there, you can't be spending doing something else. So I'd say definitely the biggest challenge is managing timescales, but I think the way we've tried to figure that out and make sure that we can still operate as a business is to have this post-contract service.
You described the whole process and the way you're tackling, servicing your client, obviously, and you find the perfect way to meet expectations. What part of this process would you say you get most nervous? The minute before going in and presenting the first concept, or the moment you start the execution of the project?
Actually, I get not nervous, but most excited when I'm presenting a concept design. I absolutely love presenting to my clients. In terms of nervous, I guess I don't get nervous before something goes on site either. Actually, again, it's just a lot of excitement. I love seeing something come to life. They're probably the two parts of the whole design process. So the very beginning and the point where it goes on site that I love the most. I love seeing things through. I think nervous is maybe different in every project, in, when a problem does come your way that wasn't anticipated, or if a client decides to, change their mind along the way, and you want to make them happy, you want to design for them and for their needs, but as the designer that what they're asking you, for example, might have a domino effect on another part of the design. from a creative standpoint, or maybe even time scales and budget, that's when I start to get a bit nervous and things start to go off track. It's part of the job to be able to adapt, for sure. But yeah, I guess that's probably the point in time where it can get a bit stressful, because, you know, a client can ask for a change. Once a design package is already done, of course they have the right to do so within reason. But the nervousness then comes in the impact it also has on our time scales, because one change to one particular area can impact maybe 10 different drawings that then need to be updated. And after they're updated, they also need to be issued to 10 different contractors and subcontractors, and they need to get a sign off from the client. So all of these things, it's like the domino effect that it has, and that I would say is what makes me nervous. But in terms of the actual creative process, it's probably more excitement than nerves.
Right. In the last 2 years, we all went through a transformational period where we all have to modify the way we behave, socialize, interact, work, and live. Now, within the context of residential design, has the brief or expectation of the client changed due to the post-COVID, let's say, you know, transformation?
I think there are new expectations from clients to accommodate for things that were not generally part of a brief before, such as the most obvious one being spaces to work from, quiet spaces to work from. So I think there has been an impact, but I think it's nothing kind of out of the ordinary or unexpected. Of course, at the time when things changed, it was unexpected, but now it's kind of a given that when you're designing a space for someone, actually some clients, they often don't think about it, and we have to say, you know, things have changed. Do you want to maybe think about having a space for this or for that, or, you know, quiet spaces not only to work from, but maybe you have had to have more help come home. So how are they also going to be accommodated for, so they're not just kind of left in a leftover space? So we like to make sure we've thought about the real ins and outs of how a family operates, and make sure that they've all been thought about and all been catered for.
If I want to play the devil's advocate and say to you, can an interior designer design to budget?
I think yes, if we are given clear budgets from the beginning, it's very helpful to help us stay within a budget that has been defined. But at the same time, having a budget at the early stage is not the only thing. I think it's about having a transparent dialogue between a client and the designer and contractors involved to make sure that you can come towards a reasonable budget, because those budgets also have to be, they can't just be a number that are pulled out of the air and a client says, I only want to spend X amount, so you must stay within that budget. I think it really has to be informed by everyone who's involved in that process. So not only the designer, but also the contractor, because ultimately they are the ones who are quoting for the work. They have the knowledge of, much better knowledge of the cost of materials, which can fluctuate, regularly, especially over here in Dubai. So I think yes, we can design within budgets for sure, but they have to be reasonable budgets and they have to be well-informed budgets. And actually, that well-informed budget, the number really comes out once you have some sort of concept design or schematic design against which you can estimate how much a project is going to cost. So a lot of clients, they come to me and say, okay, how much should I spend on a room? And I have to start digging and say, okay, well, it depends on these factors, say we're designing a house, how many beds, how many sofas, and all of these things will change the number. And after that, we can say, once we have something tangible against which to give some sort of estimation and come up with an informed budget, then yes, we can definitely stick to a budget. But if that budget is just a number and it's just the number that they want to spend, that can be very difficult for us as designers to stay within, because they might not be, reasonable or rationalized to the same extent that we could rationalize.
So what you're telling me, if I understand correct, what I'm sensing is that even though a client give you a number at the very beginning of the process, budgeting, it is an evolving matter.
Yes.
They only comes as the design progresses. Am I right in that understanding?
Yes, I would say for the average project, yes. Unless that client has come to us with the budget that has been thought through, maybe they have some experience in the past, maybe they've executed other projects, so they've got actual, tangible quotes and BOQs from previous projects whereby they've come up with this figure and, they can rationalize why they think this is a fair budget to assign towards a project, then yes. And of course, through conversations with the client, you can figure out if they know what they're talking about or if maybe they're less informed and that if they're going to need a bit more guidance along the way as to how much things are going to cost.
Is value engineering, a recurring request on your projects?
Yeah, unfortunately, so I'd say it is something that we have to go through, and we also have to just factor in that is part of the process. The way we design, we don't like to be too closed off, especially in the first, say, 2 stages of the design process, so concept design and schematic design. We kind of design knowing that if we design a space and, we're showing something with a concrete floor, for example, we know that we can achieve that look by spending 150 dirhams a square meter using a porcelain tile, or we can spend 250, 300 dirhams a square meter using an actual concrete render, or anywhere upwards if we go to some of the more high-end suppliers. So we don't get limited by in the design process by limiting the material choice, but definitely once we've kind of completed a schematic design and we put our specifications together, after that we start to see a more realistic budget coming together, and there may be some elements that are kind of outside of the budget that has since been established that we have to look at finding alternative solutions for. So using the same example, we may have specified micro cement floor, but we know that if we remove that element out and replace it with a porcelain tile, maybe we can make a saving of 20,000 dirhams, which the client needs to use on something else. So we do it, but we kind of factor that in as part of the design process in order to come up with an overall spend that's reasonable on behalf of the client.
As an artist, not as a businesswoman, how does it make you feel when they ask you that?
So, as an artist, from the artist side of me, of course, we want to use the best materials for our project. But I think inherently when you're running your own business as well, you do have, you're more sensitive to the fact that people do have their limitations. So I don't get offended by somebody saying that, I want to save on this, because it's our job to present our clients with a couple of different options for things. So it might be, different ranges of fabrics. You can still achieve the same look without spending as much necessarily. I think where it does make a difference to me is if we've specified something that's more expensive, but we know that the reason it's more expensive is maybe the life cycle behind that product we've specified is of a much higher quality than something that's, say, come from Dragon Mart. That's where I start to get offended, because it kicks in that you start thinking, okay, where did these products come from? Why are they as cheap as they are? And especially if you see them spending on the wrong things, then you start to, I guess, be offended. But from the artist in me, essentially, I don't think I get offended. I think I'm very mindful of the fact that people do have budgets, and it is part of our responsibility to kind of present a client with all the options that they have available to them.
Right, and so you're very commercially aware of the implications, I would say, which is great, because normally artists are all associated. You never got a clue about money, know. But
no, I don't think
actually,
we work that
you
way.
sound very to the square inch, which is brilliant. Now, I want to touch upon. I was recently involved with a big project in London where there were some branded residencies, and the sales agent said, the moment somebody walks into a residential development, artwork makes the deal. What's your views on that?
I think art is extremely important to a space, and it's often left as one of the last things to come in and accessorize or dress the space. But I think when used correctly, and when it's selected and brought in early into the design process, it actually becomes like an anchor for us as designers to design the rest of the space and, the material palette. So we actually just recently worked on, completed a project in Burj Khalifa, and we commissioned an artist locally to make some paintings. And we worked very closely with her, down to the last detail of picking the paint shades that she was going to be using in that space. And we were doing that process with her while we were in parallel speaking to other suppliers of things like soft furnishings, window treatments, flooring, to make sure that the art that we were putting in very much kind of complemented all of the other finishes that were being used in the space. So I think it's very important, and it does, I think, more and more, it should be considered earlier on in the design process rather than as like, a space filler. We always try and make sure that when we're doing even a space plan, so stage 1 concept design, we do indicate on a plan where are we going to have pieces of artwork displayed. Even if we don't know what that art is, we need to know where it's going to go, like if it's at the end of a corridor, creating a focal point, because that also informs what we do at the second stage, schematic design, where we start designing ceiling layouts and positioning lights. We need to make sure that the lights have been positioned correctly to, make that artwork sing, essentially. So all of the things have to be, it definitely shouldn't come in at the end. I do agree that it's super important, and I think more than anything it should come in at stage 1 and stage 2.
It's interesting because I was going to ask you a question now, which, you actually brought in me that question, and because thinking what you were saying, that I would say in hotel development, there is a brand above the door, and everybody try to get the design philosophy to follow that brand. When you're designing residential private houses, are you designing also with the brand in mind? Do you brand your design?
That's a very easy one for me to answer. No, we don't brand our design as like a Rumah Interiors design space.
Or as a concept, like Malibu style, I would say.
We definitely give each project a story. There's always something to come back to. There has to be, because to kind of go through the whole design process, if we don't have like a strong concept from day one that we're always referring back to when we're taking decisions, we can get overloaded with the amount of decisions that need to be made in any given project. So I would say, coming back to what I was saying earlier, we don't have any two projects that look the same. I think you'll see that when you see our projects. So we don't have like a signature or branded Rumah Interiors style. But we do like to give each project that we work on its own identity that's more reflective of the person who's staying in that property, their brand, their personality, not our brand. We're not designing that space for us. We're designing that space for the client. So we're trying to represent their personal brand essentially in the space.
It's fascinating because you describe also the connection between design, artwork, lighting, so they all coming together. Now, to put the cherry on the cake, out there is a lot of, I don't know how to define them, way of living, from feng shui to vastu shastra. Mm-hmm. Do you get a lot of requests to design according to this kind of, I don't know, style? I call it style. I don't know how they are defined.
I used to actually, more so back in I'd say I haven't been asked for a project to have feng shui or vastu incorporated for a number of years now, maybe 6 or 7 years. When I was asked to make sure that the principles of feng shui and vastu are incorporated into the solution that we do, the same way we would bring in a specialist to help us on lighting design, for example, to do lux level calculations and things like that, we would bring in a specialist to work with us on that, because we're not here to kind of guess what's right or do a Wikipedia search, because that's also not being true to the client's request. So I think if a client were to ask for it, they haven't for a few years, just in my own personal experience. But if someone were to come to us with that request, then we would just be sure to factor that in, that we find somebody to collaborate with and have them involved in the entire process with us, like hand in hand.
I know you said all your projects look different, so I would imagine all of them, they are unique. But is that a project that you are the most proud of, for whatever reasons?
I would say probably the project we just handed over last weekend. We just finished a project in Burj Khalifa. It was a penthouse apartment, around 5,500 square foot in the sky.
Wow.
So I think that project I'm the most proud of for a number of reasons. It was obviously a large square foot area that we did. We did it in a very short span of time. So from the day we started design to handing it over was all within 6 months.
Wow.
We're proud of it because obviously it's an iconic location. It's a penthouse, so it's kind of flagship for us. And it's also a project where, as a team, we all put our best foot forward. We knew that this was going to be a special project, so we all kind of, as a team, worked to our strengths. And I think it's just kind of reflective of that, of what we are able to do when we all put our minds together and we all put our energy behind something. And I think one of the key reasons for its success as a design that we did is because as a team we all put our best foot forward, but we also, in that process, we knew that in order to turn it around in such a short time span, we're going to need help. It's not just us as designers, we're going to need other people involved. So we were very much involved in the nomination of the right main contractor. We were involved in the nomination of all the right subcontractors. We vetted all of these people who are involved. And something we did in this project that's not been the norm previously is to have a dedicated project manager. And I think without a project manager involved, we would not have met that deadline, because your design package can be, completely airtight. But if there's not someone on site every day monitoring what's going on and holding the contractors accountable for what they have promised to deliver on a particular day, and I mean literally like micromanaging them to the day, that by 5 o'clock today this needs to be finished, the project wouldn't have been completed. So I think this project I'm most proud of because it's a huge team effort beyond us as a company. Everyone who was involved in the project really just threw themselves into it. And I think everyone who's involved has been super happy with the result, including the client who saw it for the first time last weekend. So I think just having that moment, walking in when they were there, was quite emotional that they were happy, and we were all really happy that 6 months we worked solid, but it was worth it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, you can see your passion coming out. I say, I even go emotional, when, which is brilliant. And what is the greatest satisfactions when you have client that comes in, and what's the best compliment that clients can give you?
I guess the best compliment is just like seeing them smile, as cheesy as that sounds, but seeing them happy. Of course, even when the client walked in last week, there are still snags to be addressed, and we were aware of that. We made him aware of that as well, that there are certain snag lists that need to still be addressed, but it didn't prevent him from moving in. But just seeing them happy as a family coming in together, and just, that first moment of like, wow, I really wasn't expecting this. So they saw the renders. This client in particular doesn't live in Dubai, so they hadn't been seeing it on a regular basis. They'd been seeing pictures and videos that we were sending, but it really all just came together in the last day. We were all there. It was like we were opening up bags, we were accessorizing the house. So even the pictures that we had sent when they had boarded the flight in Chicago to the point where they landed, there was a huge transformation. So I think all of us were equally surprised by how it really just came together. So the biggest compliment is just recognition that it's true to the design intent that we had set out. When we see the renders, for example, side by side with the real space, we can really see that it has translated. It's not been overly changed along the way. And I think the biggest compliment, not just at the end, is in the process, is just being given trust. So when we're putting something forward, to not have too much pushback that, oh no, find me something else, oh no, can you do this instead. It's just in this process, in this project, specifically, we were given a lot of trust. So I feel like we were really able to excel and deliver what we know we're able to deliver.
Do you feel part of those extended family when you, because it's so personal? You're talking about trust, which is everything.
100%. Yeah. Each project I feel that I've ever worked on since the beginning, like I do like to treat them as it's my own house. So definitely when you're working for a client, especially an end user, you're spending a lot of time with them, talking to them, understanding their, little daily habits and things. So these are all very personal things. So you do feel like they become an extension of your own friends and family, which is great. It expands your own network personally. I guess coming back to your previous question about the biggest compliment is also having them come back to you to design another project for them, which we've had a couple of times this year. So actually 2 of the projects that we're working on currently are for previous clients. So previous clients who we've designed their private environment or home space for, they have now invested in properties in Dubai that they want to rent out either on long-term or short-term rental market. So we're designing those spaces for them. So I guess that is the biggest compliment, that they trusted you, you delivered, so they're happy to get you involved again. And I found in the second project that we're doing for them, they're even more willing to let us take the decisions, let us guide them on the correct materials and budgets for certain aspects of the design, and then let us just see it through.
Sustainability is a big subject in the hospitality industry, and of course you also do design hotels. But how is that subject entertained in the residential interior design?
So I think with residential interior design, it's not as explicitly incorporated into a brief like it would be in a hospitality project. I think it's more for us as the designers and all of the professionals who are involved in a project to make sure that the decisions we take are sustainable decisions. And I think it comes down to, as vague as it sounds, like good design itself is sustainable, because if you design something which is timeless, it's less likely to get ripped out and changed in a couple of years' time. So I think it's really important for us to make it part of the design brief, even if it's not there explicitly, and B, it's our responsibility to design things that we don't think people are going to just tear out and do again and, create more waste that's eventually going into landfills.
Interesting. And would you say that if you look at the subject critically, and would you say that now, because sustainability has always been there, let's be honest, but it's never been as talked, discussed, and communicated like now. He's now fashionable to be aware of sustainability, or are we getting more responsible?
I would hope it's not because it's a buzzword. It's not because it's fashionable or trendy to be sustainable. I think the more people are educated about the importance of the decisions that we make and the things that we buy, essentially any project that any property that you furnish, from the hard finishes to the loose finishes, you're consuming. So I think that those decisions, it's super important that the decisions that we make or that we guide people to make, and the things that we advise people to buy, that they're thought through. So I would like to answer it from a point of, I hope it's not because it's sustainable, because it's a buzz. Yeah. I hope it's because it's actually the benefit of making sustainable decisions is genuinely, it's understood why it is important. And I think the best way we can make sure that becomes increasingly so is just educating people and being informed ourselves, first of all, so that we can correctly pass on the information we have that relates to our industry and passing it on to essentially the clients who are the ones who are transacting, who are buying the products that we are specifying for their space.
In your 15 years experience, you transition from an employee as an employer, right? So you are a businesswoman now. And if we look at the industry as overall, there are some areas some industries that have done quite well progressing the gender equality subject.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the design industry?
So I feel that, if you typically go to any industry events here, that's where you're going to see in real time whether there is like an imbalance in gender equality. I'd like to say over here in Dubai, I do see a great mix in the interior design industry specifically. Personally, like myself, I've never felt disadvantaged by being a female. If anything, I think it's actually worked to my advantage. There's leverage there, and being a female, there is, I think, an association when you're an interior designer. There's like an inherent like EQ that females generally have that can be applied to the interior design process, particularly when it comes to home environment. So I haven't seen a huge inequality over here, and the majority of my professional experience has been here. I think it's great that it's become more of a subject of discussion. So across different industries, there becomes more of a balance. But interior design specifically, I don't feel like, we've been, as females, disadvantaged versus the males.
We genuinely believe that it's more a man problem than a woman problem because we're not being able to address it. Would you agree with that?
Sorry, say the question.
It's more a male problem.
Male problem.
As you know, some women feel that they are disadvantaged in the workspace, and they feel they're not being vocal enough. They've not been outspoken about the subject. But for me, I don't see it as a women problem. I feel it's more a men problem that we not be able to address it.
Maybe because it's become, and especially in the last couple of years, like more of a global discussion point, that maybe men are feeling that way, that they want to be able to address inequalities. But I think in the day-to-day, I can only speak from my own personal experience. I haven't found it's a hindrance. But I do think, like I said, it's great that it's become more of a topic for discussion across various industries, and as it should be. So I'm definitely more from the kind of school of thought that equality is more important rather than, giving more of an advantage to females or anything like that. I think it's important that we, males and females, get the same opportunities, same pay. All of these things are crucial to the development of society as a whole, not just in our industry.
Right. What's in your bucket list for 2022?
So for 2022, personal or professional bucket list?
I'll let you decide what you want to tell us.
I am planning to go back, subject to things being open, spending some more time in Bali like I did 5 years ago when Rumah Interiors first started. So that's definitely on the horizon, touch wood. And then professionally, we're working on a couple of interesting things. So we're going to be starting a line of furniture. Is one thing that we're working at in the background. And then the thing I'm probably most excited about has kind of grown as kind of organic service that from the last few months, I've seen a lot more of my clients. They are asking us to design for rental properties. So we're going to be starting a service line that's dedicated to essentially like private developers. So in the past, I've had clients who are developers of like full buildings, for example, but I'm finding more and more that there are people out there who have invested in the last couple of years in properties that they're putting on Airbnb. So we're going to be really focusing a lot more on that clientele and putting together a solution that's really tailored towards that kind of project.
So if we were talking about design trends for 2022, would you say that this is one of the design trends, designing for rental properties?
Yes, I would say it could definitely classify it as a design trend because the end use really does define the decisions that are being made in the design process. So I think it is kind of is correctly associated as a trend, because we are trying to design for essentially something that's timeless, appealing, that photographs really well, and decisions that are being made about, small things between whether you pick a regular sofa versus a sofa bed. They are informing the ultimate outcome of the space that you have designed. So I'd say that for 2021, for sure, I've seen it, especially in the last 6 months, come through a lot, but I think we're going to see that even more so in the coming years. So that's why we are going to be focusing on that kind of clientele moving forward.
So in the context of design trend, which other design trend do you foresee popping up in the next 12 to 14 months?
So I'd say technology is probably going to have a even more, it already is with the iPhone 13 this year, well, actually even iPhone 12, the LiDAR scanner. I think the ability to be able to see pieces of furniture in your home environment, the ability to be able to very quickly make a 3D model of your space, all of these things are going to make the actual process for us as designers and the options that we have to be able to present to our clients. I think we're going to see those things coming through very much into the process. And I'm excited to see what other interesting things come about, because I think the last 2 years have taught us that you can't predict everything. I don't think 2 years ago, if someone had said that, would home offices be as important as they are to a brief these days, we couldn't have predicted that would be the case and why that would be the case. So I'm just excited to see what is to come.
You mentioned that in your bucket list you're going to have designing your own furniture collection, right? I want to play this analogy because the burning questions that is going to come out of this analogy is this. Is designing a furniture collections the ultimate goal or a natural progression for an interior designer to express their design philosophy the same way a chef working for somebody else opening his own restaurants?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a natural progression
for
us as interior designers, because part of our service, we do often get involved in designing pieces of furniture for our clients anyway. And I think this has really grown from the fact that we do this. We've been doing it for our clients. We have to go into a lot of detail about how a piece of furniture is put together. And I've just really enjoyed it. And I know a lot of other designers and the rest of my team, we've all quite enjoyed it. It comes with its own set of, headaches, as anything does. But when you do kind of come to a well thought through solution and you've made something, at the end of that process, you have something tangible that a person uses, sits on, experiences, enjoys, then naturally it's very easy to see why it's like a natural progression in the design process. And there are such interesting materials and things out there in the furniture design industry that there are elements from different parts that you see that you'd want to bring together in your own way, the same way that a chef puts together different ingredients. So I think it's definitely formed out of a natural progression of the things that we're already doing.
Would that collection bear your name?
Oh, I have not actually decided on the name. It wouldn't be my personal name for sure.
Is another exotic?
Yeah, it would be probably something abstract again, and I kind of rely on the fact that it will probably just, like Rumah Interiors came to me naturally, it will come to me what the brand essentially would be, if it would be an extension of Rumah Interiors or if it would be like a sister company.
So, if we stand in the living room of the amazing penthouse you designed on Burj Khalifa, and outside on the building front we want to put a massive canvas, what message would you write on that?
Probably put my number to say, if you want something like this, then more sentimentally, I guess appropriately, we're in the last week of 2021, so I'd be wishing everyone a great 2022, and I'm excited to see what is in store for everyone.
Dear Sonal, I had no doubts that today has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.